Hi guys, I am here today with Ann Roberts, the VP of Payments and Loss Prevention for Space Coast Credit Union. Thank you for hanging with us today, Ann.
Happy to be here.
So we're going to talk a little bit today about business process outsourcing and how Space Coast uses it. So the first question that I have is, can you explain a little bit of the areas that you guys use BPO? Because I think sometimes people learn about it, but they don't know exactly where to place it. And you guys have done a phenomenal job at this. So can you kind of explain how that works?
Yeah. Sure. We have several departments that have BPO. It started with our indirect lending. The portfolio that we had increased significantly, almost to the point where we couldn't maintain it ourselves in-house, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, you're very successful in that line of business.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have. So we were able to tie in this process and get the resources to help us process these loans where the members had no idea that this could have caused a delay in their services, and everything went smoothly, went on time, and we were able to meet all of our necessary production limit goals and making sure everyone had their payments and everything.
All the trains just ran on time.
Yes, it was amazing. It was amazing. So that was the first area that we entered in the BPO process, and then we had other areas of our operations department, our loss prevention, payment services. We have several others I can't think of off the top of my head that have institutionalized this in our own daily workflows. Yeah. So from my experience, it's just been one asset to have in our arsenal of making sure there's not a kink in the armor when it comes to our member service and ensuring that we're meeting all SLA expectations that our members have.
That's awesome. So like when I talk about this with credit unions a lot, and I think there's this perspective of it's kind of got a broad scope to it, right? And in a large part to you guys, yes. Right? If we're constantly trying to find new ways to use it and make sure that it's utilized correctly. Mm-hmm. So, from Space Coast's perspective, with all of that in front of you, how do you decide where to start? I'd love to hear your story of why you guys started in indirect, and then if you're talking to a credit union, how would you guide them of where to start, right? When the world's kind of your oyster, how do you pick that?
Yeah, it's a good problem to have when you have too much business.
Yeah, I think we're all looking for that at some point, right?
That would be great. And just making sure that regulations are met, compliance is met. So that involves a lot of training. But other areas, like I have payment services, there are tokenizations and firewalls and things that aren't accessible outside of our credit union. So those are areas that we can't offer the BPO service. But when it comes to the loan processing and just getting the loans out and entered into the system so that our members can make their payments on their loans is great. And also some of the other areas that we've been able to is just the overnight work that we have. Yeah. Because we have that time difference, it's actually a luxury. Some people may think of it as a hindrance, but it's not in any way, shape, or form, because we're not 24 hours a day. Business doesn't stop though. And to us, it's a benefit to be able to keep all these processes going and not have to worry about them overnight.
That's all. We kind of make that joke a little bit internally, yes. I feel like we work at a company that runs 24 hours a day because yes. There's this almost shift perspective of when the US is asleep, India's up. So I agree with you very much. Like it's almost
Correct.
Like a magic of like, oh, you wake up and it's there and it's done.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Woo, magic, wand. So, I think you talked a little bit about like when you've got, like a hard token, maybe that's not an opportunity, but yes. I feel like with Space Coast, you have very few places that you couldn't utilize it. So, Correct. Where you guys have it placed, there's a lot of very sensitive data in it, right? You're touching a lot of systems. They're very much like an employee of your staff. So how did you get comfortable with that, and how would you kind of tell a credit union to get comfortable with a vendor? How do you figure out which ones and what's the right partnership and what's that look like? And I mean, you and I have a large background in risk, right? And that's how you and I originally kind of chatted and bonded. And so how would you look at that from a risk perspective? That's been your mind for a very long time. So how did you guys get comfortable with that?
Well, a lot of it deals with trust and knowing that our best interests are your best interests, and being aligned and knowing that there's a level of accountability on both sides. Yeah. That we're always going to be transparent with what issues we may have, the needs we have, and making sure that there's open dialogue at all times. And that's the key part with this relationship. we always have open connectivity with the teams.
Yes.
And I love it because I have 2 separate teams that go on with the payment services and loss prevention, and they're in constant communication. If something is not working, or if a system is offline, or we have a new team member coming in that needs access to something, there's conversations that are always happening.
Yeah.
Trainings, if we have to change a system, we've done something different now with our methodology of processing.
Yeah.
So now we have to update you guys on how to do it, and then training involved. And there's always been that welcomingness of having that knowledge base and being accepting of it. Because our banking industries are different in India as they are in the United States, slightly.
Yeah.
So having that team be willing to take and learn our processes and our regulations that are involved in some of these, because yes, like with fraud, there are check holds and there are regulations that we have to abide by, and having them take the training has been very, very helpful. So it almost feels like they're a part of the Space Coast team, and not another company. It's very crazy how that feels, but I love that.
Yeah, I think that, I got the opportunity a few months ago at one of the times that I was over visiting India, and there was a ClayCon event, and Space Coast had you guys sent gifts to the team, and it's so incredible to watch that because it's nothing that I think anybody on either side would have predicted years ago when we started this, of just that team is, it's truly just tight as can be. And, I think there's a lot of things I feel like, as a kind of on the looking into this process and what was built out, there's a lot of things that have come out of it that I wouldn't have expected. So could you kind of share with me a few things that are like interesting takeaways? I think some people hear BPO and they're like, oh great, it's low cost, which it is, right? But there's a lot more that has come out of it than just that, right? So could you mention a few like interesting?
Well, I think having that understanding of the features of being overnight, that to me has been the number one takeaway for our organization, is that we have members that would have to normally wait for services to be completed, and it just kills my heart to know that they have to wait for things. And that's one of the areas that they don't, because we have these resources that are able to fill in when we're sleeping. Business doesn't stop, and getting them to understand our level of risk, understanding our red flags, knowing what to look out for. It's almost as if they know that they're protecting us, they're protecting our members. So they're also our members' watchdog, which I absolutely love. And that's one of the probably the biggest dynamic that I think that people don't quite understand with this feature, is the overnight work, especially if they're an institution that does not have 24 hours service. It's a lot to get done, and to come in the next day and they send a report first thing in the morning. Good morning. Here's your daily report. And it shows everything that they've completed. And if there's been any hiccups, any questions that they may have, they'll send it in our chat. And then we just correspond in the morning. And it's been beautiful. And the friendships that have come out of it.
Oh, that's some of the coolest parts, isn't it?
I love that. I love it. We've learned a lot from both sides. I
think it's a really cool way, when we're discussing innovation, and I think in the credit union space, it's a constant conversation of how do you innovate? And, again, I think BPO at its origination, it wasn't like, oh, this is groundbreaking innovation. We didn't think that. But to your point, that's so cool to watch something change the members and in this very positive way, and really step up to almost a 24/7 model of member service in a totally different way than anybody, thought previously. So, we appreciate it so much. You guys have pioneered this with us, and we would just not be where we are today without Space Coast. So thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today, Ann.
Of course, thank you so much. Happy to be here.